All right, guys, recently I was asked about the carnivore diet, and so I want to give you my thoughts on the carnivore diet and diets like the carnivore diet that are very, what I would call extreme. Now, extreme doesn't necessarily mean bad, and balanced isn't inherently better, but you do want to proceed with caution when moving forward with something on the more extreme ends of things. So, unlike other videos or posts where people are like, oh, you definitely need to do this, it's the best thing in the world, or no, it's the worst thing in the world, it's going to kill you, I'm going to give you a more reasonable, balanced answer. And I'm going to address big picture, again, more extreme diets where you're limiting, you're only eating certain foods or certain food groups, and then I'll give you specifics about the carnivore diet. I tend to view things on a spectrum. If in the middle of the spectrum, we have a very balanced diet, animal products, plants, kind of a combo of the two. You're getting lots of protein, fats, and carbs through a variety of sources. That's going to be a balanced diet. I think for most people, that's where you want to land, somewhere around there. But there are many times where you've got some people who thrive on more extreme diets, whether that's just better for their health or it's better for their habits. You've got other people who do it they feel best that way. Other people, they do it that way for a brief period of time, as some kind of health therapy, some kind of medical treatment, which of course we're not going to prescribe any dietary changes to help with medical conditions. That's beyond our scope of practice. But those are just a couple of reasons people do things like the carnivore diet. So if in the middle, we've got a balanced diet. On the ends, I would call this like carnivore over here, and I would call vegan over here. And then a step in from that would be keto, and which of course you can do like vegetarian keto, but generally speaking, it's a lot of meat. And then you've got vegetarian, and then, again, it's a spectrum. And you come to a more balanced place where you're eating lots of meat, lots of plants, fruits and vegetables, things like that. So I think that one of the things we have to be careful about is making sure that we're getting all the nutrients that we need. Now, there are people who thrive on vegan and vegetarian diets. So I am a big believer, and you have to find what works for you. And if somebody is doing something, if a client is doing something that's working well for them, I'm not interested in trying to change their mind. I don't say this is the way that we eat at Steel. There is no one way that we eat or recommend clients eat, right? We want to make sure we're following the 5 nutrition principles. Eat mostly real foods. Eat the right amount of food for your goals. That's calories, whether you track or not, doesn't matter. Eat the right amount of protein. Same thing. You can track, you can not, but you got to eat the right amount of protein. Don't eat foods that make you feel bad, bloated, tired, lethargic, foggy, and make sure you enjoy your diet. And you can do that. You can do that with a vegan diet. You can do that with carnivore or everywhere in between. Now, I do think it's hard. There's certain vitamins and minerals that we can only get from animal products or supplementation. Granted, we have lots of supplementation today, but I do think it's hard to thrive long-term on a vegan diet if you're not supplementing. There are certain nutrients that I don't think you can get from plants alone. Now, on the flip side, one advantage that the carnivore diet has, believe it or not, is many people can thrive and get all the nutrients they need. And of course, there are going to be concerns about fiber and vitamin C. You can look this up yourself. Many studies show that fiber is very good for you. There are also studies indicating that it's not that important. I'm not here to make claims about that, but it's just something you can look into. Some of the concerns, I know, just hearing hundreds of anecdotal stories from people who are doing the carnivore diet, one of the things you worry about is like, oh, well, if I'm not getting enough fiber or I'm not getting any fiber, eating just meat, am I going to be constipated? Well, many people have reported that that is not the case. So if you're going to do it, you're just going to have to find out for yourself. Another big concern on the carnivore diet is vitamin C. People are like, oh, you're going to get scurvy. Well, something interesting is that, and again, by the way, I'm not saying that you need to do the carnivore diet, but just addressing some of the concerns about it. So there are trace amounts of vitamin C in meat. And interestingly enough, vitamin C plays a role in carbohydrate metabolism. So if you're not consuming carbohydrates, which you're not, you're getting 0 carbs on a true carnivore diet, then your body is very efficient with vitamin C and it doesn't need a lot. Again, I'm not arguing that this is optimal, but many people are thriving on carnivore diets and have been for years and decades. And those were some of my initial thoughts of like, well, what about fiber? What about vitamin C? And those have been addressed. And I mean, I think that most people are going to feel, myself included, are going to feel way better eating carbohydrates, but carbohydrates are not really essential. Like without proteins and fats, you will die. But without carbohydrates, we do have the machinery, the metabolic machinery. For many of us, it's very damaged. There's a lot of metabolic dysfunction in America, but we do have the machinery to produce all the energy, glucose, blood sugar that we need through protein and fats. All right. So anyway, most people, a balanced diet makes more sense. Like, I think most people, I think we're omnivores. I think we're made to eat meat and plants. Most of us are going to do our best when we're eating both animal and plant products, okay? But everybody has their reasons for wanting to do, something like carnivore or vegan. So I don't think it's totally crazy either. People who are like, oh, you're going to die. Well, I don't think that there doesn't need to be any fear mongering around these diets either. Our bodies are really incredible and can thrive under a variety of nutritional circumstances. And there's no denying that while many people do best with a balanced diet, there are some people who did not thrive until they started eating vegan or didn't start eating carnivore. So I don't want to take it off the table. Now, 2 specific concerns with the carnivore diet. Number 1, you're getting 0 carbohydrates. And again, we do have the metabolic machinery to make all the blood sugar, all the energy we need from protein and fats. But for most Americans, many Americans, that machinery is damaged and it needs some easing into, I think there needs to be a slow tapering off of carbohydrate intake and not jumping right into it. Some people can jump right into it. Okay, but my concern is if you jump right into it, you're going to end up with low blood sugar very regularly. You're going to feel like crap because your body needs to adapt. That's the first concern. So tapering off carbohydrates going into it would be a strong recommendation if you're going to do that. Next, carbohydrates also help us retain water. They help with hydration. This is why when you do a keto, which is, I think technically less than 20 grams of carbs per day, but even if you just do a low carb diet, consider that like around 50 grams a day, keto 20 or less, and then carnivore is literally 0 because all you're eating is meat, water, salt. 0 grams of carbs. You see a big drop in water weight right out the gate. This is not fat. As soon as you add those other foods back in, you're going to gain it right back. So that water weight. So people are like, oh, keto, I'm losing so much weight on keto. Like, you can't judge a diet success off of what happens in the first week. You just can't. So you got to give it some more time than that. So you got to get the initial water weight off, and then you've got to establish that's your new baseline, and then you got to track from there how much weight you're losing. But when we're not eating carbs, we're not retaining as much water. The other concern is electrolytes. You probably will need to be consuming a lot of salt and possibly other electrolytes because the carbs do help us stay hydrated. And so your body, again, this is something that your body can adapt to, but it's also a concern. I've seen people do keto, carnivore, and they end up dehydrated, feeling like garbage because sometimes it's because of low blood sugar, but sometimes their blood sugar is great. It's just because of the electrolyte imbalances that are happening in the transition. So again, if you're going to do it, this is for the people who are going to do it, not for the people who are like, I'm not talking anybody into carnivore. I'm definitely not doing that. But if you're going to do it, I would strongly suggest tapering down the carbohydrate intake so your body can adjust from both a blood sugar and an electrolyte balance standpoint. Now, I'll throw out a couple benefits from the carnivore diet. Number 1, it's not a magic bullet. So if you're trying to lose fat, you're still going to have to, it's all about calories. But when you're eating tons of meat, you're getting a lot of protein. It's pretty dang hard to overeat on just meat. It's really hard. So, people can be eating 1.5 to 3 pounds of meat a day, depending on how big you are and how active you are, and maintain or lose weight. But it's still gonna, like, you can overeat. If you're eating a bunch of ribeyes, you can totally overeat. And yeah, so you got to understand going into it that the calories still matter. There are no, magical tricks in the diet world. Those same principles still apply. Your calories matter, no matter how you're eating. But certain ways of eating, like restricting entire food groups, same thing with vegan. It's not magic, but when you cut out all your junk food, it's pretty hard to overeat. So same concept here with the carnivore diet. So it is a benefit. It does prioritize protein, which is great. Most people underconsume protein, so that's really beneficial. Also, for many people, it lowers inflammation drastically. So their joints feel a lot better. They just generally feel way better. That's a huge plus. So there are some benefits to, and I'll say this again, we don't do any medical treatment. That's not what we do. But I've seen many people recover from or heal from autoimmune issues doing something like the carnivore diet. Because red meat tends to be very not inflammatory. It's one of the least inflammatory foods that you can eat for most people. So anyway, those are my thoughts on the carnivore diet. I'm not pushing for it, but if you're going to do it, this is, some things to keep in mind.